Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Coming to you, as always, from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolly, and got to give it up to my co-host Garrett for holding the reins down for the last couple weeks, and doing an excellent job, I have to say, of filling in for the main hosting duties. Thank you so much, Garrett, for just helping out while I was on a special assignment for the rebellion. um,
It was a
no,
lot
it
of
was.
fun.
What was that?
It was a lot of fun. It's been a while since I've hosted a podcast by myself, and hopefully it wasn't awful.
It was not. You probably did better than I could. I've tried to do a few times by myself, and I don't know. I have to have that someone to bounce off of into conversation.
Yeah,
Type of a
I
show.
I
Type
ended up
of
I ended up heavily scripting my what I was doing with the episodes, just simply because if I sat here and just rambled on for like 20 minutes or so, like I'd say nothing intelligent. You'd be like, "Oh,
yeah.
we gotta get rid of this guy."
I tend to, especially if it's a topic or something that I'm somewhat passionate about, I tend to rant and tend to go off into tangents. So I would probably have to be the same way, have to heavily script because it would just be
Yeah.
a tangent about how certain people are stupid or certain things. Yeah. Anyway, let's not get into that. But no, it was a really good vacation. It was really fun. Got to do a lot of really exciting things, and beautiful part of the country. If you're ever down in Kentucky, it is a beautiful country,
I've
beautiful area down there.
I've never had the
Highly,
opportunity to go to Kentucky, but I would like to.
it's really pretty. Yeah,
That's what I've heard.
that whole that whole northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area is just so beautiful. Just definitely try to get down there. I found out we missed a Comic-Con. There was the Kentucky Comic-Con was in Louisville just a few days before we were there. So we just missed it. Anyway, today we are going to be talking about some of our favorite side characters. The main characters have always get most of the love in most movies, but it's to flesh out a world, you need these secondary characters, these kind of side characters that can flesh out flesh out the world, make it more believable, and kind of give the main characters either something to fight for, or fight with, or against. So yeah, that's what we'll be talking about. So, well, I mean, what are some of your favorite side characters?
There are so many characters in Star Wars. It's really kind of hard to peg it down. If I'm going with, just from the original trilogy, one of my favorite side characters by far has got to be R2-D2, because technically, he's part of the main cast, but at the same time,
Yeah,
he's kind of a side character because he's like a sidekick. To say it's for without too much of any other way to describe him, but R2 is, for one, he is the most foul-mouthed character in the entire saga because they bleep out every word he says.
Bleep out every word he says. Yeah.
But no, he's a courageous, spunky little droid, tons of personality. One of my favorite scenes is when Yoda is digging through Luke's stuff on Dagobah and he pulls out that lantern and R2 is in a tug of war over a stupid lantern.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Yoda, who should be like the most reserved, the most calm and collected of all the Jedi, is sitting there like just beating on this droid that he should know very well.
Yeah. Who
And it's
just
like,
yeah.
and now with the retcon of the Clone Wars, like these are two characters that should have known each other by this point. They should have recognized each other.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
it's like,
It
oh,
was
oh.
I think it's interesting because I think even George has gone on record to say that R2 and C3PO, especially in the original trilogy, are kind of the eyes of the audience.
Yeah.
They're kind of that character through who, and it's also interesting that R2 is the only character that is pretty much in almost every scene. There's a few scenes where he's not in, but any of the major scenes,
Yeah,
R2 is there
he is. And
somewhere.
well, I mean,
Um,
and to be fair, both he and 3PO are the only two side characters that show up in all 9 of the Skywalker
9 movies.
films.
Yeah.
And no other character can say that. Not even Luke Skywalker. Not even
No.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's in at least 6 of them.
Yeah. And if you count Rogue One, R2 and C3PO are in 7. Because they show up in a scene, at least they show up in Rogue One.
Yeah, so
just briefly
10 movies, right?
But they do show up. Yeah.
That's 10 movies.
Yeah.
That's that's more than any other major character. Yeah, R2 for sure is definitely one of my favorite.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's hard for me to if I want to consider R2 a side character. Because I think of side character. I don't know. I would think of someone like, yeah, I guess you could kind of consider him. I think you could almost have different levels of side characters. You have a side character like that, and then you have a side character like a Admiral Ozil or a Captain Nita. But
those are almost. Those are almost tertiary characters because, like, they don't really have much of a story arc. They're just there to serve a purpose, very briefly.
True. That is true.
Shoot out some dialogue, and that's about it.
What about and my brain is gone. I've had a bit of a brain fart. He was the admiral who took over after Nita. He shows up in both.
Admiral Piet.
Would you consider him a side character, just a tertiary character, or a side character? He shows up in both movies.
Yeah. I would say he does have a little bit more of a side character status, simply because he goes from being a loyal subordinate, who's of a medium to high rank, to being given like the highest rank in the fleet. Mm-hmm. And he does the best that he possibly can with the task that he's given, although he's woefully unqualified.
He was the only one, if you think about it, though, he was, of all of the admirals and captains, he survived Vader.
Yes.
And he made a mistake. He made a mistake, and he lived to tell about it.
And the funny thing is that Piet made a mistake, but he owned up to it. He didn't let his ego get the better of him. He didn't try to lie to Vader. And that's the difference with Admiral Ozell, is that he specifically violated. It wasn't just that he made a mistake. He violated Vader's instructions.
He violated
what they're supposed to be doing. And so that resulted in him being penalized in by far the worst way.
Oh, was it? Yeah. He's he's as stupid as he is clumsy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And What about from the prequel trilogy? Are there any side characters that stand out to you from there?
The captain of the guard of what was his name? I can't remember his name. He was the captain of the Queen Amidala's guards.
Which one? During episode 1?
Yeah, he was in episode 1 and episode 2. He was the captain of the Naboo guard.
Oh, Captain Panaka.
Captain Panaka. He shows up in several of the extended universe things that came out afterwards. I think we got to talk Palpatine's right hand. I don't know. That's really, really hard because, again, where do you draw the line between a side character and Padme's double?
Yeah.
That one, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that could be a good. I mean, considering what
Yeah, he the Padme's double, who was played by Keira Knightley, of all people. Yeah, she was an interesting side character because, I mean, all we know about her is that she's loyal and that she's willing to. She had probably the most difficult job of all the royal handmaidens of Naboo, in that she is, she gets to stand in for Amidala in the event that Amidala is attacked. Which is funny because the other body double that covered for Amidala in episode 2 was played by Rose Byrne, who has gone on to do a bunch of really cool movies and films, or movies and TV and stuff like that. So having to work for Amidala, your body double has got to be the worst job ever.
It was funny. I saw a meme today, and it was the scene from the beginning of episode 2 where Padme's ship is bombed and the body double, her body double is killed, and her body double makes the comment, like, "I failed you, Senator," and she's like, "No, you did exactly what you were supposed to do."
Yep, you drew their fire.
Exactly, you did it. Yep.
As beautiful as Naboo is, I do not want to live there.
Yeah,
chances are I'm probably gonna have to double for somebody and get blown up.
Let's go movie. Well, let's go movie by movie and let's see what we can find. Episode 1, Boss Nass. As much as you can say anything about,
he's obnoxious, but
Boss Nass was great.
He was.
Yeah. I like Boss Nass. Who else was a good side character in episode 1?
Darth Maul.
I mean, can we consider Maul a side character?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's there. I mean, he's an antagonist, but he's only in the movie for like 5 minutes tops. And so,
if that, it has one line of dialogue.
2.
He has the
or maybe it's just one, but it's broken into 2 statements.
Unless we reveal ourselves to the Jedi, unless we will have our revenge.
Yeah, and so he makes for a good side character,
which is so funny because as quiet as he is in the movie, he is just the opposite in Clone Wars. He never shuts up.
Oh, I know, right? And that's the funny thing is he becomes so hell-bent on taking down Kenobi. It's like, dude,
Kenobi!
You're mad because he cut you in half. He did exactly what he was trained to do. I mean, who's the one who should be holding the grudge? Obi-Wan, who, lost his mentor to your blade, or you because you got cut in half and left for dead?
Well, I mean, that's the dark side for you.
Yep. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as episode 2, I think by far one of my favorite side characters. I mean, and Jango Fett makes for a great side character. He's very
He does.
very interesting, but Zam Wessel, like that character, like she gets virtually hardly any screen. Like they made a huge stink about her in the toys back in 2002 when the figurines were coming out, and you could change her face and all that, but then and they made another stink about it with regards to the Lego pieces that were coming out for her speeder and for her as a minifigure. But at no point, like there's no background other than what you see on like Wikipedia or in some kind of like book or something that's been published by Lucasfilm. And that's it. We get nothing of her backstory. We get nothing of like what her skill set is, where she comes from, nothing. And like so many questions, and none of them get answered like on screen. We have to read a book about it. It's like having to do homework.
Yeah. I think where the side characters really shine isn't until you get into the Clone Wars TV series. And then you have a ton of really great side characters that show up, from not in every episode, but show up from episode to episode. And I think some of them would be great in live action.
Oh, I agree.
I would love to see Hondo live action. Oh, Hondo would be so hilarious to see.
That guy's a character, man.
Just to have him show up in, like, if they do a season 2 of Obi-Wan, just to have him randomly show up, it's like, Obi-Wan!
Well, from what I understand, they're not going to do one for C-3PO, but I was curious. I'm curious to see how it would go. Yeah.
So now, would you consider? I mean, if you consider, like, who do you consider the main characters? Obviously, Luke and Leia, and probably Han. Are you Chewie? Would you consider Chewie?
I would consider Chewbacca, because, like, if you look at the promotional material for the original film, like the pictures were of those 4 characters almost exclusively, with the exception of Darth Vader as the antagonist. And that was kind of by design, because like everything looks better in a quartet. Although as far as actors doing dialogue, they were just dealing with the 3 with Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill. And it's famously been said that that they were casting the same time as they were doing the casting for Carrie, and so Carrie Fisher and Sissy Spacek both read for Leia. They both read for Carrie in that film, and then obviously we got the casting we got. But I mean, we almost had Kurt Russell as Han Solo at one point. We almost had William Catt as Luke Skywalker.
Okay.
Which would have completely thrown everything for a loop, because
Yeah, they remind me never to travel back in time and change the past, so we have that.
Oh, don't remind me. I almost want to give a spoiler alert for The Flash.
I was thinking the same thing. Yes.
Oh, so you've seen the movie?
I just watched. Yeah, we just got back from.
You know what spoiler alert I'm talking about?
Yes. We can talk about that off air. As you can see, I'm wearing my DC.
I did see that
classic DC superhero. Anyway, again, here's one that I'm not sure if I would put them in a side character or put them in a main character, because they technically were, in a lot of ways, the main antagonist of the original Star Wars, and that's Tarkin.
Tarkin is by far the biggest threat in A New Hope, but he's also not. I mean, both he and Vader are the main antagonists, because Vader is the Vader's
In the first movie, I almost feel like Vader's the heavy.
Yeah, he's
Like-
he's
like-
the heavy hitter. He is definitely the. I mean, Leia says it best that Tarkin is holding Vader's leash, because once Tarkin is gone,
Yeah.
like Vader is like he's in charge of the fleet.
Yeah.
There's which is weird, because like you'd think with him being Palpatine's right hand guy, he would be in charge of the fleet more often, but with the Moffs, you have Tarkin being this, he's the Grand Moff, so he's the one in charge of everything military wise, and so that would make sense, because at that point Vader's no longer a military leader; he's more of an enforcer assassin.
Yeah. I think I've talked about this in the before. One thing I've always kind of found interesting, that if you look at the original trilogy, there's only one movie where Vader is the main antagonist, the main villain, and that's Empire.
Yeah,
In New Hope, it's Tarkin. Tarkin is the main villain. He's the main antagonist, with Vader kind of the heavy. And in Jedi, it's the Emperor.
yeah.
So really, the only one where you have Vader as the main villain that they're going up against, the main bad guy, is in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At which point with Empire, you've got Vader, and Vader's whole goal is just to get his hands on Luke, and just
Yeah.
that's just, oh man, there's just so much that you can pull from with regards to these
Well,
These
another one I just thought of is Mon Mothma.
yeah she's a very solid. I mean, you only see her briefly in Return of the Jedi, but when you have a character like that who's capable of commanding a room,
You get so much. You learn so much about her in just a few lines of dialogue, in the way everyone else around her acts. You know that she's a person of some importance, that she holds a lot of authority, and that even people like Princess Leia in Han Solo seem to show deference to her, at least some sort.
Yeah,
Like,
and Solo,
you
who
get the
like,
idea that she is.
what's interesting is Solo, like, who went from being like this just very cheeky, very disrespectful or disingenuous character. He was a washout from the Imperial military, and here he is, one of their greatest commanders. And so I think that's kind of cool that in that transition for the character, he you see how much he changes to the point where he's able to respect Senator Mon Mothma without ever really having met her before.
Yeah. Let's see, who else do we got?
I would say Jabba the Hutt makes for a great side character, because I mean, like, he's an antagonist, but he's a side antagonist, and like he's like, every description that you get of the character, he is vile, he is awful, and he was, I mean, for the fact that he's a puppet, I mean, literally, not figuratively as a character, but like just the design of the character as a puppet. That, I mean, they bring so much realism to this character. Like, he could really exist. And
Definitely.
It's brutal.
Yeah. And what makes it good to you? What makes a good side character from a writer's point of view?
From a writer's point of view, a good side character is someone that you want to get invested in. They're not just there to be a comic relief. They can do that, but side characters also, they help out the protagonists
Hmm.
in a way that is meant to be beneficial. They go about it doing their own thing. They have their own personality. They have their own quirks. Like when we meet R2D2, he's on a mission for Leia. His whole goal is to get to Obi-Wan Kenobi, deliver the message, and get him heading towards Alderaan. That is it.
Yeah.
That's his only mission. And because of that, it takes him to Tatooine, where he's looking for Obi-Wan. He is brought in contact with his with his last master's hidden twin brother. Both of these characters now being the last children of a Skywalker of Anakin Skywalker / the villain. And it brings him in contact with a Jedi master that he has known for decades. And which is weird because Obi-Wan should have recognized him. Again, because of the Clone Wars.
I think he did. What was that?
But he says, I don't seem to recall ever owning a droid.
He never did own a droid.
That's true. He never did, technically.
He never did own a droid. And his droid was R5.
That's
R2
true.
was... So I think there's a way around that because I think there's more of a cheeky thing of like I know who you are, but he says, I never owned a droid. There's always double talk and...
Yeah, everything's from a different point of view.
Things with Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing. Like Obi-Wan, like it wasn't until after the Clone Wars that Obi-Wan started obfuscating the truth with the way he phrased certain things.
Could we consider Obi-Wan a side character of the original trilogy?
In the original trilogy, I would say yes, because like if you're looking strictly at the hero's journey as a story structure, he is the epitome of the mentor figure. Kind of like how Merlin was for King Arthur, because if you look at the overlap between Arthurian legend and Star Wars, it's beat for beat almost the same story. And so you have this mentor character who brings the hero into a larger world, and so he is technically a side character, especially for Episode 4. He is a tertiary character in Episode 5 because all he does is guide Luke to Dagobah, and then he has that brief conversation as Luke is leaving for Cloud City, and then he remains a tertiary character in Return of the Jedi because he only has one brief interaction as a Force ghost, and then the next time you see him, he's not saying a word.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you're going that, you could look at Yoda in the original trilogy as kind of a side character.
Yoda is a side character through most of the franchise. He does, with the end of Episode 2, after his big fight sequence with Dooku, he does go from being a side character to more a prominent character, but he's not the chief protagonist, because the chief protagonists for the trilogy were primarily, well, in the first film, it was primarily Amidala, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan, with Anakin as a tag-along. When you get to Episode 2, it's Obi-Wan and Anakin and Amidala, and then same for Episode 3, but you get more variation because you get more time with Yoda, you get more time with Mace Windu, both of whom are side characters, but they're prominent side characters because there's a point and purpose to it. They're not as tertiary as someone like, say, Bail Organa, who hardly has any screen time, and he only helps out once in a great while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what about in the we're talking prequels, Palpatine?
I would not say Palpatine is a,
because he's not a prominent. I mean, he's a prominent character, but he's not a main.
He's not. Well, here's the thing. He's somewhere in the mix between side character and main antagonist, and here's why. He's the main antagonist behind everything that's going on. He's the one that created the need for the blockade in Episode 1. He's the one that generated the need for the clone army. He is the one that is stripping the Republic of all of its freedoms and thus converting it into an empire, into a dictatorship. And while you have other antagonists working for him as the primary antagonist, like the Trade Federation, and then Darth Maul, or Jango Fett and the Geonosians and Dooku, and then Grievous and the rest of the Separatists. He is the overarching nemesis behind the scenes, and it's not until I mean, the audience knows it, but it's not until episode 3 where it becomes beyond evident. And it's like, yeah, it's and that's the fun thing about side characters, is that side characters can bounce back and forth between being prominent or tertiary, or being protagonists or antagonists, wherever they fit in. I mean, in my books, for example, I have a character that's introduced in book 2 who is a side character. He's a secondary character for sure, and he barely pops in as a tertiary character in book 3. But in book 4, he is the protagonist. He's the central figure. So depending on the story and what kind of story you're trying to tell, characters can shift and change their responsibilities based on what the story requires of them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think this is a good point too, as we're kind of getting to our the time here. So
yeah,
this has been a really fun discussion, and I think we can just talk more about something like this in the future. So why don't you Garrett, tell the people where you can find, and also tell about our little adventure that we're going to be doing starting next month with our live.
So starting next month, we're going to be doing a live stream in July, which is going to be focused on the Star Wars role-playing game. You guys can't see it. I'm holding up the second edition, revised and expanded edition of the Star Wars role-playing game put out by West End Games. This is one of my favorite versions of the role-playing game, just because it's super fun, super easy to play. It's specifically based out of the Rebellion era, which is where our story is going to be taking place. John is going to be playing a rebel pilot character that he's been building. We have a couple of other guests who will be joining us on the live stream, and they will have their characters. We will actually have them on the show in the future, so you guys get to introduce to them before we do the live stream. And then we're going to be we'll just be playing, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
It should be.
I'm breaking it up into 5 chapters for this first campaign. Each month will be a different chapter. Still having to draft where everything's going to start, what I'm going to have you guys do, and all that. But it's going to be fun, based on the decisions that you guys make. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Well, Garrett, why don't you tell the people out there where they can find you at?
Yeah. So you guys can find me on Instagram and Twitter at GKJ_publishing. I talk about my books. I talk about my show, which I'll pitch here in just a moment. I connect with other authors. But my show is on YouTube. It's called The Right Way. You can find my channel, GKJ Publishing. I'm the only one with that channel name. And on The Right Way, we talk book recommendations. We talk author interviews. We talk creative writing tips. Right now, I'm getting ready to close out an entire series on world building writing tips using Ellen Brock's World Building Bible. So as of the recording of this video, I've got a new top 10 video coming out on July 1. You guys will enjoy that. My guest host, Stormy Lewis, has a great list of book recommendations for those people watching.
Awesome. As for us right here, of course, you can get a hold of us by our email. That is warofthestars1@gmail.com. That is also our Twitter handle at War of the Stars. All of the social media, you can contact us. Just search War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. We are on Spotify, not Twitch, Stitcher Radio. Of course, we are on the new Spotify. Used to be Anchor podcast for Spotify. Pretty much anywhere fine podcasts are heard. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/War of the Stars, or go to our Spreadshirt shop and search War of the Stars there. Thank everyone for listening to the show. Like I always say, it's always so cool when I hear people or people tell me they listen to the show, they'll enjoy the show. It's always so cool. But as for us, remember, this is not just my Star Wars. This is not just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
This is the way.